Well, hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. Let's begin, as always, with the latest international headlines. US Senator John McCain meets Minister of External Affairs Sushma Swaraj. Meeting takes place under shadow of a row over reports that NSA was authorized to spy on the BJP in 2010. Senator seeks to expand Indo-US defense and strategic partnership. Iraq horror ends for 46 Indian nurses. Special Air India plane carrying the nurses from Iraq lands at Kochi International Airport after a brief halt in Mumbai for fuel and food. Israel-Palestine tensions rise over alleged revenge killings of teenagers on either side. Israel beefs up security on its border with Palestine in Gaza. Roger Federer to try for a record 8th Wimbledon title on Sunday. The former world #1 to face Novak Djokovic in the finals of the Grand Slam. This will be the 35th time that the duo will face each other. Well, our top focus this week. US Senator John McCain met Minister of External Affairs Sushma Swaraj in New Delhi on Wednesday. The meeting took place under the shadow of a row over reports that the National Security Agency was authorized to spy on the BJP in 2010. Here's a report.
Even though US Senator John McCain's two-day trip to Delhi was overshadowed by India's protest against the NSA snooping on BJP, the former American presidential nominee sought to expand Indo-US defense and strategic partnership. McCain cancelled a news conference due to be held outside India's foreign ministry after India summoned a senior US diplomat to the ministry over the spying report. US and Indian officials gave differing explanation for the cancellation but said it was not linked to the row. McCain and Swaraj discussed bilateral relations and the situation in Afghanistan and Iraq. MEA spokesman Saeed Akbaruddin said India had sought reassurances that any surveillance that had taken place would not recur.
Our concerns have been expressed clearly to senior officials of the US Embassy here. In doing so, we have also sought an explanation of information contained in these press reports and an assurance that such authorizations will not be acted upon by the US government entities as far as Indian citizens, entities, and the government of India is concerned.
Indo-US relations have been delicate for months, following a major spat over the treatment of Indian diplomat Devyani Khobragade, who was arrested in New York in December, an incident that was widely blamed for the resignation of the US ambassador to New Delhi. The Obama government has sought to revive ties since Modi's election in May, with an eye to ramping up bilateral trade and defense deals with India. Modi was for years denied a visa for travel to the United States following the 2002 Gujarat riots. He has responded positively to the US advances. McCain, whose Arizona constituency is host to some of Boeing and Raytheon's most important defense businesses, told the Senate last week that Washington should seek to help India's economic and military development.
And to talk about this meeting, we have with us in our studio today Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, former ambassador. Ambassador Mukherjee, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us. According to you, what do you believe are the main takeaways as far as this meeting between John McCain and Sushma Swaraj and John McCain and Prime Minister Modi are concerned?
Good question. The main takeaway is, I think, linked to the context, which is the timing of the visit. And included in that, of course, is the changed political scene in India. You have a situation here, and America realizes this perfectly well, where for the first time in 3 decades, there is a government very firmly in power at the center, which is not beholden to any coalition partners, which will not seem to be dithering and not being firm on policy as well as domestic issues. It's also the second largest country in the world. It's one of the major economies of the world.
Biggest democracy.
It is the world's largest democracy, as a New York Times columnist wrote, William Safire, that when India goes to the polls, it's the largest show of democracy on earth.
Yes.
So you put it in that context, and also the fact that in the last few years, regardless of the pinpricks that have happened, the Khobragade affair, the surveillance, not just this time on the, reported on the BJP when it was in opposition, but earlier on embassies, including our embassy in Washington, and so on. But underlining this, obviously, is the fact that John McCain is visiting, and he's a Republican, is to underline that the US realizes that and wants to underline that the relationship with India is extremely important in terms of its global interests, in terms of its regional interests in Asia, and so on, that India needs to be wooed as a partner in that India has all the qualifications and the ability and the inclination to be part of that if America plays its cards right, and that this enjoys bipartisan support.
Indeed.
In the US. More than that, I think, on a straight quid pro quo sense, naturally, the US has expressed its disappointment in two major things. One is the lack of movement in taking the nuclear thing forward, the tenders for the nuclear plants, some of which it was hoping to get because of the problem relating to the nuclear liability bill that we insist on having. That, I think, we will have to see how it goes, because it has been reported, and I think it's true, that even Indian suppliers of components and so on are actually quite unhappy about the liability bill. So that the government will have to take an informed decision on, and we'll see how it goes. Although in terms of defense material, America, we have bought last year, I think, from America over $8 billion worth of defense equipment, but India being probably over a period of time the largest importer of arms in the world, I think the US wants to make a push for being among the leading suppliers, purely in terms of trade. And as you know, the sale of military weaponry and arms also works into quite well into your quest for a strategic relationship. I mean, the word strategic is overused, but strategic, to my mind, basically means a long-term relationship in which periodic events, specific events, do not destroy the whole partnership, which includes a defense partnership, because the world sees a defense partnership as something that shows total trust between those two countries.
Indeed. Let's look at another aspect of this whole thing now. From an economic point of view, how important is it for both the countries to have cordial ties?
I think it's enormously important. If you consider that we overlook all sorts of transgressions by the Chinese, partly, more than partly because it's our largest trading partner, with tens of billions of dollars of aid going both ways. And in fact, India suffers from a huge trade imbalance with China. To that extent, if you look at our relationship, commercial relationship with the United States, it goes across simply buying and selling. We have enormous amounts to gain, enormous gains to be made through transfer of technology, where the US actually has been reluctant. So it's our job to persuade them. Because if there's one thing I learned in two stints in America as a diplomat, was that America is, quite rightly, I would say, ruthless in the pursuit of its national interest. If we want transfer of technology along with trade, particularly in defense equipment, if we want the gains to involve something that will help our industry in a long term, our manufacturing side in the long term, then we have to persuade America that it is in its national interest to do so. It simply is not enough to just whine and say, please do this. We are not going to just buy and pay you.
We need to go for it.
We need to go for it. We need to persuade them. We need to show them that it's in their interest, that India's moves towards partnership with the United States will be that much firmer, that much more enthusiastic, and that much more based on solid foundations, and be that much more long-term. Because predictability is just as important in foreign policy as any other business.
Interesting that you brought up China. Now, as far as McCain's visit is concerned, let's not forget, we also have Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel as well as Secretary of State John Kerry going to visit India in a couple of weeks now. So do you think there's a subtle message there for the Chinese or for China on the whole?
Well, if you go by the spoken word, you get the same bromides, that the world is big enough for both China and India, and these visits are not aimed against anybody else, blah, 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 the usual motherhood refrain. The fact is, that I firmly believe that America is a little uneasy about China's rapidly increasing sort of policy of throwing its weight around in the South, vis-a-vis, if you notice the South China Sea thing, various other aggressive moves by the Chinese. Being a superpower, I think they're looking ahead to a time when they might have to counter that kind of Chinese policy, not directly, because they too have a lot to gain by a relationship with China that is friendly. But for that to happen, you need reliable partners.
Yes.
And I think it's quite apparent to me that for them, the India, Japan, US triangle seems to be something to push along. And for me, what I read in the press about Prime Minister Modi's inclinations towards supporting such an initiative in terms of partnership in the Look East policy, in terms of shoring up India's involvement in the Southeast and the Far East, while continuing to maintain serviceable relations with China, is, I think, the way to go. But I would simply urge, for what it is worth, as far as China is concerned, this trust but verify kind of approach.
Okay.
Because China has in the past reneged on its commitments.
Yes.
It has in the past gone against things it has actually signed. It has given us enough reason to believe that they will move away from any agreement, any treaty, provided they see it's to their advantage. And I think we should therefore proceed with normal relations and actively promote relations with China, keeping this always at the back of our mind.
All right. Now, I was reading a few pieces in the American press, of course, in the American media. They were talking about this particular meeting and the series of meetings that are going to take place in the future as the exact words that the New York Times as well as the Washington Post, the exact words that they used were, of course, an all-out charm offensive. That's what the US media is calling it. Yes. Is that what it is?
I think so, but the charm offensive is more a journalistic word than something we would use in the world of diplomacy. It is an offensive, it's a diplomatic offensive. It is, in some senses, a preparation for the big event. The big event being the meeting, the bilateral meeting of Prime Minister Modi with the US President.
Yes.
Even though it's his second term, he is the US President. And the symbolism of that visit and the substantial input, the substantial takeaways from the visit, whatever they are, will be of enormous importance in terms of the what is known as the India-US strategic partnership. So, and the relationship between India and the US is so diverse, so multifaceted that without fear of contradiction, I can say regardless of pinpricks, regardless of the ups and downs that are created by specific events, caused sometimes not because of any deliberate policy change, but because of some silly mistake by somebody, a burst of enthusiasm or a burst of ultranationalism on the part of some, some middle-level official or whatever. The fact remains that although the nuclear issues, the defense issues and so on, and things like the Khobragade affair and surveillance find almost 100% of media space, if you look a little behind that, there is a huge amount of initiatives and cooperation which will go over decades between India and the United States in the area of health and education and the economic relations and research and so on, the tens and tens of thousands of students who go to the States to study. These are all extremely important initiatives that are included in the agenda of the Indo-US partnership.
All right.
And officials will discuss this. The head of state on the one side and our head of government are not going to get into specifics. But their meeting will provide the catalytic impulse, the atmospherics of that meeting, the symbolism of the meeting will set the pace or increase the pace of hopefully, of this interaction.
Certainly, of course, September is not too far away from now. We'll exactly know what the two heads of states will decide and what that meeting will bring forward. Thank you so much, Ambassador Mukherjee, for joining us on the World Panorama this week and sharing your views and perspectives on this subject. Lovely having you on the show.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but on the other side, of course, the Iraq horror has finally ended for the Indian nurses. We'll tell you all about it in just a bit. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama. Well, all 46 nurses who are held up in areas controlled by the ISIS have been freed. They reached Kochi in the morning by a special Air India flight from Erbil in northern Iraq. Here's a report.
With a huge sense of relief, Kerala Chief Minister Mukherjee announced the good news. 46 nurses who were stranded in Iraq since violence escalated in the country have all been brought to safety. Air India sent a Boeing 777 aircraft to bring them and other Indians back. The aircraft, with a seating capacity of about 300 passengers, returned to Kochi from Erbil on Saturday morning.
The success that we have had in extricating those 46 Indian nationals makes us redouble our efforts for those who still are in captivity. And I can confirm to you that as of yesterday, we have received confirmed reports of them still being in captivity.
The nurses were taken from a hospital basement in Tikrit to an undisclosed location by the ISIS on Thursday. Chandi met External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj in Delhi on Friday, seeking the centre's assistance in bringing them back.
Very much relief, not only me, the whole people of Kerala relief from the issues, all the people.
Meanwhile, the leader of Iraq's Kurdistan region, Masoud Barzani, has asked the regional parliament to prepare for a referendum on independence in the region as well as in disputed areas adjacent to the country's north. Hundreds gathered in front of the regional parliament holding up Kurdish flags and shouting slogans. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has already dismissed an earlier demand of the same nature.
Well, much else has been unfolding around the world. Here's a quick wrap of the other international news of the week. President Nicolas Sarkozy has come out in his defense after he was placed under formal investigation for influence peddling. In a television interview, Sarkozy denied committing any unlawful act and said that French justice system is being used for political ends. He said the grotesque case against him was designed to humiliate and harm his reputation. Sarkozy allegedly sought insider information from a judge about an inquiry into illegal campaign funding. He was detained on Tuesday for questioning, the first time a former French head of state has been held in police custody. Violence flared up in Israel after the body of a slain Palestinian teen was found in Jerusalem late on Wednesday. Israel has been already unsettled over the killings of 3 teenagers who were kidnapped by suspected terrorists from Palestine. 17-year-old Palestinian Mohammed Abu Khadir was seen being forced into a car by suspected terrorists, after which he was found dead. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas accused Jewish settlers of killing the boy, calling for the strongest punishment against the murderers if Israel truly wants peace. The US Homeland Security Department has said it will put into place enhanced security measures in certain overseas airports with direct flights to the US. The move comes amid US media reports that Al-Qaeda affiliates in Syria and Yemen are developing bombs to smuggle on planes. The US security agency said that the changes would be made in the upcoming days. Protesters in Nigeria who have been staging demonstrations to demand the rescue of more than 200 kidnapped schoolgirls expressed their disappointment over the efforts so far. Under the Bring Back Our Girls initiative, the activists have been staging daily protests to keep up the pressure on authorities. It has been 11 weeks since the schoolgirls were snatched by Boko Haram insurgents from the northeastern village of Chibok near the Cameroon border. The World Health Organization hosted an emergency meeting in Ghana on the deadly Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Health officials from 11 countries met in Accra to discuss how to put an end to the crisis. Regional health ministers said that West African states lack the resources to battle the world's deadliest outbreak of Ebola. The epidemic is responsible for the deaths of 467 people in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Moving on now, let's bring you up to date with the international entertainment news from around the world.
Beyoncé has topped the Forbes list of world's 100 most powerful celebs for the first time since her debut on it in 2004. LeBron James, the NBA's top player who just opted out of his contract with the Miami Heat to explore other options, moved up to number 2 from the 16th spot last year. Hip-hop star Dr. Dre occupied the 3rd place with $620 million in earnings. Oprah Winfrey was placed at the 4th spot and Ellen DeGeneres rounded out the top 5, moving up from number 10. The 7th installment of Fast and Furious will hit theatres in April 2015, but a week earlier than previously planned. Universal Pictures recently declared that they had shifted the release date for the racing franchise as it would help in booking more international playdates. The film, which will be helmed by James Wan, was earlier slated for a summer 2014 release, which had to be postponed due to actor Paul Walker's tragic car accident in November 2013. Cameron Diaz, who is enjoying her 40s to the fullest, revealed that she was never drawn towards the idea of having babies. According to People magazine, the 41-year-old star said that not having the responsibility of a child had made things easier for her, and though she likes protecting people, she wasn't ready to be a mother now or in the near future. Diaz, who has been linked to Good Charlotte guitarist Benji Madden, will be featuring in her first on-screen naked scene in the upcoming American comedy Sex Tape. Lindsay Lohan has filed a lawsuit against the video game makers of Grand Theft Auto for creating a character named Lacey Jonas who looks like her. According to the legal papers, the actress's look-alike character parties at the Hotel Chateau Marmont in West Hollywood, where Lohan had once lived, and also escapes paparazzi as a mission in the game. The documents also claim that the character was shown wearing similar clothes, hairstyle and accessories as worn by the Mean Girls star. Lohan, who had been threatening legal action since December 2013, apparently never gave permission to the creators to base the character on her. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius honoured Bollywood superstar Shah Rukh Khan with the highest French civilian award, Legion of France, in Mumbai. Fabius travelled to Mumbai to confer the award on Khan for his contribution to cinema. Speaking on the occasion, Fabius said, "More than the talent and success, Khan is popular among the French people for his generosity." Exuding humbleness, Khan said the honour was for the entire film industry and craftsmen who have been working for the last 100 years to weave Indian cinema's success story.
Shifting focus now, let's bring you up to date with all the sports news that you might have missed this week. Here's all the action in our sports wrap. US President Barack Obama commended the national football team for their performance and for making the country proud at the Brazil World Cup. Obama called team captain Clint Dempsey and goalkeeper Tim Howard after the 2-1 loss to Belgium. On the call, the president commended them not only for their work on the field, but for conducting themselves in a way that made the country proud. The US Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel also telephoned Howard to congratulate him over his record 16 saves in the game. Argentine great Diego Maradona has said he could be the next coach of Venezuela, the only South American country that has never made it to the World Cup. Cesar Farias quit in November last year after the Venezuelan team, which is known as Vinotinto for its burgundy-coloured kit, missed out on the Brazil finals. The Venezuelan Soccer Federation has not made any announcements about a replacement despite rumours that several coaches of local teams are being considered. Rafael Nadal won't turn his back on Wimbledon despite a third successive flop engineered by 19-year-old Nick Kyrgios in a frightening glimpse of what the future may hold for the 14-time Grand Slam winner. The undisputed king of the French Open, where he has 9 titles and owns a staggering match record of 66 wins to just 1 defeat, is enduring diminishing returns at the All England club. Nadal remains confident he can win another title at Wimbledon, a belief fueled by having injury-free knees which have been tested to the limit in London, where the ball bounces lower, increasing the stress factor on his suspect joints. Bulgaria's Grigor Dimitrov defeated Andy Murray in straight sets in the quarterfinals, ending the Britain's Wimbledon title defence. Dimitrov won the match 6-1, 7-6, 6-2 in 2 hours and 1 minute and reached his first Grand Slam semi-final. Murray had been on a 17-match winning streak at Wimbledon and was looking to reach his 6th consecutive semi-final. It is the first time since 2008 that he has failed to make the last 4. India's chances of hosting the 2019 Asian Games was in jeopardy as the Olympic Council of Asia refused the Indian Olympic Association's request for extension of deadline for submission of final bid documents by 15 days. The deadline to submit the final bid ended on Tuesday, but with the government yet to take a decision on the issue, the Indian Olympic Association had sent a letter to the Olympic Council of Asia requesting for extension of the July 1st deadline. The Asian body said it can consider India's bid if the country can submit the documents by the end of the week. That's it on this edition of World Panorama, but we leave you with President Obama's call to Clint Dempsey and Tim Howard.
Clint?
Hello, Mr. President. How's it going?
Hello, Mr. President.
Man, I just wanted to call and say you guys did us proud.
Thank you very much.
Clint, you were fantastic. And Tim, I think I don't know how you're going to survive the mobs when you come back home, man. You're just like, you're going to have to shave your beard so they don't know who you are. I hope I get a chance to see you guys again at the White House sometime soon. I still got my jacket that you guys gave me.
All right, awesome. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, appreciate you guys. Safe travels back.
Thanks for your call.
You bet. Bye-bye.